Another manifest destiny moment. I'll tell you, this is driving me crazy. I just clicked on this. I was going to do a video about how the pyramids were built, and this comes up. Tough as nails. They're going to try to build something. Listen to this.
While it is a competition, the show also stresses the importance of teamwork, and we like to think we're a pretty fierce team here at The Talk. Am I right, people? Phil, we're ready to go to work. Bring on the Tough as Nails challenge!
All right, tough as nails. They're going to try to build pyramids. Actually, they're going to build a wall, but we're going to see how would you build a pyramid extremely fast. Listen to what the competition is here, and then we're going to have our own competition. This is going to be fun.
So I have to say that I've never seen so much bling on Tough as Nails, but you guys have got it. I don't know about the high heels, but we're going to see how this goes. All right, Tough as Nails Talk team, are you ready to do this? Here is the challenge. Akbar is 6'6". You are going to build a wall as fast as you possibly can on the clock. 90 seconds you've got. And here, audience, you want to cheer them on because if they get it done in 90 seconds or less, you guys are going home with a nice prize.
Guess what it's going to be? A pyramid. Okay, my outstanding friends, here is your challenge. To create the Great Pyramids within 90 days. How would you create a Great Pyramid such as that within 90 days? Well, I know how to do it. Well, I don't know if I necessarily know how to do it, but I know how I would try. I would start from the top and work my way down. Oh, yeah, Roger, how are you going to do that? Well, what would you start with, Roger? Well, here's what I would start with. So, what would I start with? Right here. This is the kind of thing I would start with. Something like Devil's Tower. And what would I do? You all see all these little square fibers running up there? I know why they're there. Because this is biological. Now here's what I would do. I would start stripping off this transition zone up here, which is called the Wrinkle Zone. You see how these are nice and straight and these are all wrinkly at the top? Well, I can explain exactly why that occurred. This is not magma flow of some nonsense like that. There's just absolutely no way this would create these kind of patterns. Now, so we have the blocky ones, and then we have the really scruffy ones. So I would come right up to the top, and I would throw all that stuff off and get it down, and then whittle it down to be my pyramid. And what would I see at the top? Well, I would see these little square blocks coming straight up the top, because they are here. It's just been, messed up at the top, so you can't really see them. But if you stripped all this stuff down, you would see little square patterns coming up the top here. Let's see if we can find those possibly at a pyramid. Who knows? Okay, my friends, looky here. A friend of mine, Pete, sent me this today, or the other day. He posted, look at the top of the pyramids. How interesting. They are these little squares. Those are the fibers that we just showed. It's coming up from Devil's Tower. We strip all the stuff away from the edges, and we ended up with our pyramid going down. And these are the blocks going down. Now, they dressed up the outside and cleaned it up, but used geopolymers exactly like concrete on the outside to make the nice flat sides to it. They stripped all that stuff off because it was literally slabs of concrete, and they used it for other building projects. But this shows that the top of the Great Pyramids is literally biological fibers with holes in each one of these to supply it with nutrients to keep them alive when it was alive. Now they're just little holes. The black is vein blood. The red is artery blood. This was a biological foot. And now you say, oh, come on, Roger, how could that be a foot? How could there be such a big creature that had a foot that size? Well, let me tell you something. That isn't even close to the size of the creatures that existed. I can't account for that, but I'm going to tell you what, that is only up to an abrupt transition of the ankle of the Achilles tendon, and it's just the tendinous portion. The whole rest of the foot was over here. This came up to the muscle, way up above. This is just a tiny little piece, runs down to the Achilles heel. This is absolutely a tiny little piece of a foot. There's hardly anything here compared to what was here originally. Enoch said they were at least 2.5 miles tall. So this is nothing. And the reason I can say these are feet, or, you know, they would call them trees, but they're not trees. They didn't know when they first made the maps that they were feet and not trees, but they showed the pyramids being built on tree stumps. And you see all this red flesh? This is flesh. This thing died and fell over. That went up to the leg. The leg was over here. The leg was way over here. I'm not kidding you. This was just a tendon going up. The rest of the leg has deteriorated and the body has fallen over. These were gigantic creatures. And if you look around this whole area here, let me see. You see it? This is all red flesh. This thing died and it just fell over. All of this green area is where the body decomposed, and stuff grows absolutely fabulous in this red bloody tissue earth. Red clay earth, it's very, very productive. And that's why you see this all growing so excellently around where the creature died. Now, let's look at the ancient maps that show these as actually being trees. But they were not trees, they were feet. And the reason the trees didn't survive is that salt is what destroys cellulose. And these were salty oceans. This flesh is preserved in salt. Totally opposite. The trees were destroyed. It breaks down the cellulose. That's the only way almost that you can break down cellulose is extreme high quantities of sodium, salt. And so look it up, salt invasion of cellulose. It's very obvious, and it's one of the few things that really destroys cellulose easily. Okay, this is the Nile River, this is the Giza Plateau, and these are the pyramids, shown like they built them from tree stumps. Well, they didn't build them from tree stumps, they built them from feet. I believe that's the Sphinx. And they're all over the place here. It looks like all the giants stood over here trying to save themselves and all died standing up. And then when they did, they deteriorated. Their bodies fell apart and made all the red sands and that stuff in that area, the red dusty looking stuff. And the tendons don't deteriorate that way. The tendons are limestone basically and basalts and so forth. They turn into very hard things where fleshy tissue just becomes eroded and turns into clay and dirt and mud. So don't forget now, this is my buddy Pete sent me this one. See all these little tiny holes? As I said before, I think I said, that's what their nutrition, that's how they got nutrition into these fibers. The same way they got nutrition into the pregnant lady stone. You see these Baalbek stones? You see how big these things are? That's a person standing there. These stones were absolutely enormous, and they came out just like this. They didn't have to do much with them. This was constructed later, but this was the early construction using the heavy, heavy, heavy stones. And I'll show you where these are literally nurtured exactly by the same little holes as in the top of the pyramid. All right, here's these Baalbek stones, absolutely enormous. That's where the biological blood delivery was. They didn't cut these, they just broke them. They are flat as a pancake and square as a box, and long as you can believe and heavy as can possibly be imagined. These were moved by something, and they were giants that had to move these. There's no other way that anything, they didn't put these on rollers and carry them up hills and bring them over and build pyramids out of them. Hell no. They were there originally. They stripped them down from the top down. So, can we do it in 90 days? Yeah, maybe. But it didn't take 90 years or 900 years, which you probably would have to do the kind of construction to make these gigantic pyramids. And there wasn't just one, they were all over the place. They were stripping them for building materials. And then they left them over and they said, oh, we might as well patch them up and make them look kind of fancy like pyramids. And everybody will wonder how come they're so fancy looking. Okay, so thanks to my buddy Pete Irwell, we now know that the pyramids had flat little spots at the top that showed all those fibers, and all those fibers have holes exactly like the pregnant lady stone, and they're all squared off exactly like Devil's Tower, and they're huge pyramids, they're everywhere. So were they built on tree stumps, or did somebody just carry stones over there and build them for fun? No, they stripped them down, used all the bits and pieces for building materials, and what they left, they dressed it up to make it look fancy. These were built on the feet of the giants. Okay, what I claim is that the pyramids are nothing more than these, and this is the wrinkle zone, a real scruffy looking wrinkle zone, and the rest is nice clear tendon. But they break off in chunks. They're literally made in little tiny blocks, but they're fused together, tough as hell. When they break, though, they create that wrinkle zone, and I can show you how they are literally constructed in blocks, and that's why you see a ton of blocks creating the pyramid coming up. They just take them all off and use them. You see this? This is the abrupt transition. They break right off here, and that's why everything falls off, because it's all fleshy stuff above that. Now, why is it blocky? There's why it's blocky. These are little tiny blocks. You see how small this is? This is this here. Bone is here, and then it comes over to, this is what is the tendon. Now the tendon shows that it's like this at the top with all those little tiny holes, and this is like the little fibers this size, and then it shows it over here. These are how small these tiny little fibers are. That's what makes up tendons, these little bitty tiny blocks, and that's why they're all over the layers of the pyramid. You see that? That's an electron microscope shot of different fibers that are, these are biological fibers, and that's how they build themselves together in these little blocks. To us they're tiny, but in a pyramid the size of a devil's tower foot, that's what the kind of blocks you get. Now they fuse into nice solid square blocks going all the way up normally, but if you looked at them really carefully you could see that there are these fusing points. Okay, you see all these little separations in here. This is not accidental. We are built literally in layers. Now you see this block right here? You can't see the top, but there'll be this one here separated nicely. It's showing a nice separation. Of course, this is the separation between the fibers. That fiber has fallen out. These were gigantic blocky fibers. Now the ones at Baalbek are even bigger than this, but this is the way they were originally biologically constructed in the body. All they did was pull them out and separate them off and take them away and build with them, or in the case of the pyramids, they just stripped them back down and used them for building material, and then faced off the outside edges with geopolymers, which is ground up material like this, turned into putty, put back into the tower. I just want to warn you, there's all kinds of people trying to destroy my research. They're putting this out as the roots that are underneath Devil's Tower. These are sweet corn roots at 8 weeks old. So don't forget, this was a foot. This is the wrinkle zone at the top of the tendon, where the fibers that are under tension, boing, they snap, and these just wrinkle up. These are the actual square little blocks that run up. And this over here is some blood running out from a little artery. There's going to be arteries, and there's going to be veins, and there's going to be tiny, tiny little capillaries in most of these. Most of them will have no runoff of blood whatsoever, but there are going to be spots where it's a little heavier blood because there'll be an arterial passageway. Here's another one over here. They have them from every so often. They'll have a pretty good source, and then other than that, it just sort of works its way through. But all of those little tiny holes up at the top are nothing more than passageways to let nutrients down into these very, very tough fibers, which were from a biological foot. All right, and they stripped them down and made pyramids out of them. They did a nice job, too. All right, I showed you all the biological stuff. This is nothing but fleshy, ground up materials that they turned back into concrete, basically, and made the casing stones. That's why they're pretty smooth and flawless. They don't have a bunch of nasty stuff. Brian Forrester did a video showing these stones, and the back part of them was all scruffy, like you could see it was just concrete put in there. In other words, they weren't nice squared off stones pushed up against nice flat surfaces. They were put up against whatever was there, and some of it was all squiggly and broken up, and they just filled it with concrete and made it so that it would go right up the side. And they did a real nice job of attaching them. But they were attached to stones that were already here because it was biological. You see these casing stones? They're a different color. They're different colored stones. And if you look at the Brian Forrester video, you can see, if you look down the top of the stone back here, they don't fit just flat right up against another flat surface. They're all, all kind of crazy surfaces on that backside, because this wall sticking out had all kind of crazy surfaces on it. So they were all in and out and so forth. Certainly not bricks just cut and laid there. And the scaling here coming off of these bricks is the reason it's scaling like this is because they took the forms off too quick, and it created what's called rapid oxidation. Just like a scab, just like scab over the top of the brick. So this, what it is, and it was biological. That's my opinion, and I think I've shown enough evidence. And now things can be looked at and in a whole different light. Because nobody ever looked at it this way before. Nobody ever had even the slightest clue that this could be possible. And I didn't either, until I started to find the things I found, and then had them DNA tested and CAT scanned the parts and everything. And I found out exactly what it was, and nobody cared. Nobody cared a bit about the honesty and the truth of what our reality is. I found no interest whatsoever. I still don't today. So that's why I do what I do. All right, have a sterling day, my outstandingly wonderful friends. Talk to people and say, we'd like to have a little reality around here. If we expect to be taught what we have to say that we're educated, we certainly like to be educated about truth.